This week on Jerusalem Dateline, the crisis in the Persian Gulf. Who will blink in the standoff between Iran, England, and the U.S.? And the U.S. Congress sends a strong message to the BDS movement. And perhaps the greatest mystery of all, where is the Ark of the Covenant?
It's a real thing, just like it did 2,700 years ago. It still exists today.
All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Iran's President Rouhani proposed a trade of tankers between Great Britain and Iran in order to resolve the crisis in the Persian Gulf. In the midst of the standoff between the two countries, Great Britain has gone through a major change of leadership. Britain's Conservative Party has chosen Boris Johnson to lead their party and the country. He's an American supporter, has defended President Trump, and vowed to make Brexit happen in 3 months. But as Dale Hurd reports, first he has to deal with Iran.
Boris Johnson arrives at number 10 Downing Street at a challenging time for any new prime minister, with fears that war could break out with Iran. Iran's Revolutionary Guard seized a British-flagged oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz last Friday. Revenge for the British seizure of an Iranian tanker off Gibraltar earlier this month. But Boris Johnson has already signaled he's no hawk on Iran. During last week's TV debates, Johnson said he would not support U.S. military action against Iran. And in 2018, then Foreign Minister Johnson traveled to Washington to try to persuade President Trump to stay in the Iran nuclear deal, and said the British government remained committed to the deal. As for his pledge to leave the European Union by October 31st, no matter what, Johnson inherits the same divided Conservative Party in Parliament that helped stymie and finally bring down Prime Minister Theresa May. Johnson may also be handed a no-confidence vote and early election within weeks. But he does have a friend across the Atlantic.
I like him. I like Boris Johnson. Boris, I spoke to him yesterday. I think he's going to do a great job. I think we're going to have a great relationship.
And that irks a lot of people in the British establishment. A BBC interviewer tried to get Johnson to say something bad about President Trump. When he wouldn't, it prompted this exchange.
Will you be as craven if you were Prime Minister?
I've been, towards the United States of America, craven.
Towards anybody who's powerful in the world.
Don't be ridiculous, if I may say so. When it comes to sticking up for UK interests, whether it's over climate change or over disputes with Iran, over the Iran nuclear deal, we have been very, very forthright with the United States of America.
In 2015, Johnson accused Trump of stupefying ignorance and said Trump was unfit to hold the office of President of the United States. The former mayor of London, known for his occasionally wacky style, has adopted a populism that so far has served him well. But now as Prime Minister, he must navigate through an international crisis as possible war clouds loom. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
With the possibility of war between Great Britain or the U.S. and Iran increasing, CBN News examined the military capability of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Take a look.
Conventionally, Iran is actually quite weak. The reason the Islamic Republic of Iran has posed a threat to U.S. interests in the Middle East and to allied security in the Middle East for so long is because it is an asymmetric military powerhouse.
Iranian expert Behnam Taleblu says Iran uses asymmetrical warfare through terrorism, proxies, and intimidation.
Bloviating, hyperbole are actually core elements of Iran's security policy. Why? Again, because the Islamic Republic of Iran is hyper-cognizant of its own conventional military deficiencies. And when Iran knows it can't win the battle of capabilities, it looks to win the battle of resolve.
Middle East expert Jonathan Spire says Iran's strength lies in its proxies throughout the region, like the Palestinian Islamic Jihad that recently launched hundreds of missiles into Israel.
They have this array of political, military organizations, many Hezbollahs, so to speak, of which Lebanese Hezbollah was the prototype, across the region. Very committed, very well indoctrinated, sometimes well trained young men who are available, non-Iranians for the most part, who are available for military tasks.
One flashpoint for Iran's asymmetric warfare is the capability to close down the Strait of Hormuz, where much of the world's oil passes through, just off the coast of Iran.
It's exceptionally vulnerable. However, Iran doesn't have the capability to keep the strait closed. It has the ability to block it, and the U.S., through overwhelming military superiority, could open it.
The one military arena Iran holds an edge is its ballistic missile program.
This is, again, an exceptionally important area because multiple U.S. directors of national intelligence have said that Iran has the largest arsenal of ballistic missiles in the entire Middle East.
Given its strengths and weaknesses, Iran balances its hot rhetoric with cool, calculated geopolitical moves that make it a formidable adversary in the most dangerous region of the world. The U.S. House of Representatives passed a resolution opposing the Boycott, Divestments, and Sanctions Movement, also known as BDS. The movement is a global campaign to isolate and economically cripple Israel. As Charlene Aaron reports, passage of the measure exposed rifts in the Democratic Party.
The anti-BDS resolution passed overwhelmingly, but 16 Democrats, mostly progressive, voted against the measure.
Among them, Representatives Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, who support the BDS movement. They claim the resolution restricts free speech, and they've co-sponsored their own resolution supporting boycotts. On the House floor, Tlaib invoked boycotts of Nazi Germany and South Africa to oppose the resolution against BDS.
Americans boycotted Nazi Germany in response to dehumanization, imprisonment, and genocide of Jewish people. In the 1980s, many of us in this very body boycotted South African goods in the fight against apartheid.
Supporters of the resolution say BDS is unlike other boycotts because it seeks to delegitimize Israel, the world's only Jewish state. Democratic Representative Ro Khanna tells CBN News the resolution does not restrict free speech and that he's against BDS because it seeks to undermine Israel and the two-state solution.
This resolution in no way undermines the First Amendment. It says if people want to go protest or boycott, they absolutely can. They can even boycott against the United States or against Israel. All it's saying is that it's the sense of Congress that boycott or divestment that delegitimizes Israel isn't going to get us to a two-state solution and isn't what the Congress should be supporting.
Some lawmakers called for more, seeking passage of a bill that gives state and local governments the right not to do business with companies that participate in BDS, a measure that has already passed the Senate.
The bill that actually puts teeth in the law to stand up against the BDS movement all around the world.
But Democratic leadership is blocking that piece of legislation from coming to the floor. Khanna says the issue does reflect a divide in the Democratic Party.
There is. I'm going to be candid. I mean, this is an issue that has divided the Democratic caucus. There are those of us like me who believe that the United States and Israel have a special relationship. There are other Democrats who believe that boycott and divestment is the right strategy. I mean, obviously there is a difference of opinion, but I think the vast majority of Democrats have my view.
In August, Tlaib and Omar are scheduled to visit Israel, including the West Bank. Israel says despite its policy of not allowing supporters of BDS in the country, the two representatives will be allowed to visit out of respect for the U.S. Congress. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Coming up, Israel leads the world in counterterrorism.
We're not getting ready for yesterday, we're getting ready for tomorrow.
And this is where they train. Israel's success in protecting itself from attacks has helped make the country a worldwide leader in counterterrorism. CBN News correspondent Julie Stahl visited the IDF's main training center to see how they do it.
A major challenge in fighting terrorism is staying ahead of the game.
We're looking at the threats, we're looking at what's going on around the borders of Israel, and inside it, we're not getting ready for yesterday, we're getting ready for tomorrow.
The IDF started this counter-terror school nearly 50 years ago after a series of deadly terror attacks. In the last year, they trained some 10,000 combat soldiers.
We need quite a lot of special skills for our troops to have and master, and this is the place where most of these skills are taught.
During our visit to the Lothar Counterterrorism School, CBN News went behind the scenes to see how special forces work together in all threatening situations.
We teach soldiers how to rappel down from helicopters, how to breach silently into buildings, how to free hostages being taken by terrorists. We also teach underground warfare in tunnel complexes, mock tunnels that we have dug, especially from the urban terrain.
IDF spokesman Jonathan Conricus explains how tunnel warfare is the latest chapter in the terror playbook.
All of the terrorist organizations that we fight against, whether it is Hezbollah in the north or Hamas in the south, use the subterranean dimension. That is where they hide most of the time, and that is usually also how they try to infiltrate into Israel.
In June, CBN News reported on the discovery of this huge Hezbollah tunnel on Israel's northern border. Conricus said the soldiers who uncovered and captured it would have trained here.
A tunnel is a tunnel, in essence, it's underground, but we've seen that Hamas tunnels differ from Hezbollah tunnels in terms of size and depth and structure.
We've protected this officer's identity, who helped destroy tunnels along the Gaza border during Israel's 2014 operation against Hamas.
Later on, when we finished the campaign, I was posted here, taking the knowledge and taking the things that I felt out there in the field and the experience I had to integrate them together into what we teach here.
Israel uses its intel and training to help the world take on terror.
We're sharing a lot about tunnel warfare. We're dealing a lot with how to operate effectively in urban terrain, how to find the terrorists, and limit the collateral damage to non-combatants, essentially civilians.
Last year, there were 23 international cooperation exercises.
When other countries we train with, they come and look at us, and I think the things that they find special or extraordinary about the IDF would be we're agile, we're flexible, creative, and some of the things where we live with our backs to the wall, so we have to always move on and be ready for the next threat.
Conricus says while Israel would have preferred not being the leader in this dangerous field, the reality is many terrorists want to kill Israelis. So Israel will continue staying ahead of the game and helping the rest of the world along the way. Julie Stahl, CBN News, the Lothar Counterterrorism School in central Israel.
Up next, the search for the Ark of the Covenant.
They could have been right up against the wall, and on the other side of the wall is the Ark.
When we come back. For centuries, the search for the Ark of the Covenant of the Bible has captured the imagination of movie makers, archaeologists, and even a Queen of England. Legends have placed the Ark in such faraway places as Ethiopia or Ireland. But we met with one longtime researcher who believes the Ark might be a lot closer than people think. Researcher and author Harry Moskoff took CBN News through the Western Wall tunnels, up to the ramparts of the Temple Mount, and into the chambers surrounding Judaism's holiest site. His book, The Ark Report, chronicles his two-decade quest to find the legendary icon. He says one theory is that it was taken out of the temple and carried to Jericho 18 miles away.
It says in Jeremiah that some of the vessels of the temple were exited, sort of escaped, as it were, through this area at the destruction of the first temple.
But Moskoff took us to the spot where he believes the Ark lies.
This particular section of the Western Wall is really fascinating, actually, because this stone is 570 tons.
Moskoff believes a key clue lies behind this giant rock and says high-tech search tools give credence to his theory.
2 years ago, there were tests done by the University of Nebraska, sonar tests, etc., using electromagnetic waves. They actually found what's called a storage space across from here. So actually, there was a purpose for putting this giant stone, this massive slab, here. One of the reasons, in my opinion, is to protect whatever it is on the other side. And according to my theory of the Ark actually was buried by King Josiah, I think it was 568 BC, in back of these boulders, these massive stones.
In fact, underneath the Temple Mount lie dozens of underground tunnels and chambers.
Back then, 150 years ago, Charles Warren went in, actually did a survey. Nothing's really been done for political purposes, obviously, unfortunately.
Since then?
Since then, no one's been allowed to even put a shovel, nothing.
Yeah.
But basically, they were the ones that surveyed the whole area, and they were the ones who picked out the tunnels, etc.
Yeah.
They couldn't find the Ark, but...
Maybe it wasn't time. Warren, a British explorer, documented those tunnels at the request of Queen Victoria, just one of many throughout history looking for the Ark.
When people like the Crusaders and the Knights Templar, even the Palestine Exploration Fund, which was originally commissioned by Queen Victoria, came over the centuries to look for the Ark, what they were looking for was a golden box with the staves, but what they really should be looking for is a room. They could have been right up against the wall, and on the other side of the wall is the Ark.
Moskov says the original Holy of Holies had another chamber directly below it.
Actually, in the blueprint itself of the first temple, a chamber should be built exactly the same, Holy of Holies, exactly the same level of holiness as the one right above it. It was set up right from the beginning to house the Ark, with a golden floor and everything.
That's how Solomon built it, constructed, so the Ark itself could go down.
Right, it could go down.
Larry, do you feel like there's a time when the Ark itself, when the time is right, will be revealed?
I do. Timing is incredibly important, incredibly significant. Obviously, it's a groundbreaking, game-changing, biblical type of discovery. My personal opinion is that when it does happen, it won't be in a clandestine way, where we're sneaking through these tunnels, you know what I mean, and we're bringing it out under cover of darkness. It'll be a great occasion, and it'll help bring the Messiah. It'll be something that all nations will really rejoice in.
Moskov credits Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark for the renewed interest.
There are some things that got right about the power of the Ark, etc., and its destructive forces shouldn't get in the wrong hands, and it knows where it is, so to speak. It suddenly became a thing. Oh, what is the Ark of the Covenant? What is that? Oh, yeah, it sort of put it into the face of the public, and maybe that was its best success. Yeah. I loved it personally, It's Hollywood.
What do you think is the main takeaway people need to know about the Ark of the Covenant?
It's a real thing, just like it did 2,700 years ago. It still exists today. It's got the broken tablets that Moses crashed down there at Mount Sinai, and the second tablets. It really does exist. We're really going to see it, hopefully, in our lifetime again. It is a catalyst for the Messiah to come. Until it is revealed, the Ark of the Covenant built by Moses in the wilderness will continue to fascinate the world.
Coming up, we talk with Harry Moskov about another mystery, the location of the lost treasures from the Second Temple. Harry Moskov has spent 20 years researching not only the location of the Ark of the Covenant, but also the whereabouts of the treasures of the Second Temple that were destroyed by the Romans 2,000 years ago. I talked with Moskov about this mystery in Jerusalem's Old City. Okay, so Harry, we're on the Via Dolorosa, but you say there's really a lot of story here, a specific story about maybe some of the artifacts that were used in the temple could be in this area.
Absolutely amazing. I'm writing about it in my next section of the book, but yes, that actually is the truth. It's I think most people, of course, don't realize, but the very temple artifacts that were used, that were taken to Rome in 70 AD, right, and then went on from there about 400 years later to Carthage. They were taken by the Visigoths, the Vandals, there in North Africa, and then from there they went to Constantinople, right, when Justinian took over. So they were there by Justinian in Istanbul, present-day Istanbul.
Justinian, what time are we talking about?
About over 1,000 years ago, just over 1,000 years ago. So when his empire started crumbling, and his health started failing, his Jewish minister, and this is actually written down, he kept the vessels, the Jewish vessels, in a place called the Hippodrome, which even today you can see the remnants outside of Istanbul. So then when things started failing, his Jewish minister said to him, "Why is this happening to me?" And he said, "Anybody who takes the vessels of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem it doesn't end so well. And the minister said, you have to send them back to Jerusalem. And there, Jerusalem, if you send them back, you'll get your health back, you'll keep your empire, the Byzantine Empire. That was over 1,000 years ago, of course.
So they came back here to Jerusalem.
He built a church called the Nehemiah Church. And as the story goes, and as the historians put it, he actually sent those vessels back here into this area. Now, there aren't that many churches that are 1,000 years old. And there is a way of finding where the Nehemiah Church really was.
Oh, that's where it went, 1,000 years ago.
That's where it was actually built for that purpose.
So you believe they're still here somewhere in this area?
It is. That's right, Chris. They're actually in this, according to my research. I tracked them to a couple places, one in particular, that's in this area. Not only that, but there are people that have actually seen it in modern history after the.
So when you talk about artifacts, what kind of vessels are you talking about?
I think we're talking about the vessels that went to Rome, not the Ark. The Ark never made it, of course, to Rome. Ark was never in the Second Temple at all, Herodian Temple. But other vessels, even the menorah, the candelabra, maybe the golden incense altar, bowls that were used, golden bowls, other vessels that were used, maybe sacrificial items for the altar.
So the end of the story hasn't been told yet.
That's right. That's for the next chapter.
Where the treasures of the Second Temple are located is a fascinating subject. If you'd like to know more about this mystery, you can get CBN Documentary's new film, The Treasures of the Second Temple. If you'd like your own copy, or for your home group, church, or synagogue, you can go to cbn.com. Well, that's all for this edition. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.